We are going to start off with the data viewer today. If you joined us for one of our previous webinars, we've kind of gone over the functionality of InForm, but if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to ask. And as I mentioned, we're going to start out with the data viewer, and the primary users of the data viewer will be the CRAs and the CDMs of the organization. So I'm going to start out by going ahead and logging in as a CRA. So here we can see the home screen of InForm. Right now we have a blank screen here, but of course this can be customized with many things, including the InForm portal, an IRT solution, along with other applications that Eclipse offers and different web pages as well. But once again, we're going to go over to the data viewer, which we reach by coming up here and clicking the review icon. And it's going to launch right away for us. So here, as we bring up the data viewer, we see a lot of great information right away. We're looking at a summary by visit. So here, we have a nice listing of all the visits. We can see how many candidate queries we have, open queries we have, answered queries that are waiting to be closed, and closed queries. Additionally, we see a nice summary of the form states. We can see that for the baseline visit here, we have 9 forms that have not been completed, 13 that have been completed, 4 of them are frozen, none are locked, and none are not done has been selected. Additionally, we have some source verification information, whether or not the forms have been source verified, how many are not source verified, how many have been verified, how many are waiting verification. And then we have 2 review states. And the latest versions of InForm, 5.5 and up, allow us to actually set up user-defined review states to be used by different personnel. So here we have a data review 1, which in this case is actually reserved for the clinical data manager, and they can mark a certain form as reviewed so they know they've gone through and taken a look at it. And here we also have a medical review. Now we can actually have 5 levels of review, although we only have 2 in place right now. So we can see that there's still 20 forms out there that need review on the baseline visit, and 1 is in a pending state, which means it's been marked as pending, so the review is started, and 1 has been completed. So up here we also are able to go to view comments. If we click the view comments, it's going to bring up a nice listing of all the comments in the trial. So instead of in the past with earlier versions of InForm, you had to go through and look through the system and look at the top of the form or next to the item to see where any comments were, or go into reporting and create a report. A CDM user or CRA user is able to view all the reports right away. And they can also go ahead and check them off once they've reviewed them. Next, we have some additional options. So here you can see we can maximize the workspace, which will get rid of our little filter section over here. We can do some configuration about which columns we want to see to customize it to be our own. And we can go ahead and set the SV settings. So if I go to set SV settings, once again, this really isn't a data reviewer specific functionality, but where it comes up here, we can take a few minutes to talk about it. So InForm now supports a more robust partial SDV or full SDV system. We can actually come in, choose whether or not we want to do full source verification, partial source verification. If we choose partial, we're able to determine how many subjects we want to do at 100%. So we could say we want to do the first 10 sections subjects 100%, and after that we want to do 10% of them. And we can come in and select which data is critical. So we can go into a particular form and say, select the adverse event and baseline, and then as we come through, we can select those particular forms for full verification. If we go in and we further select them, they'll actually bring up a list of particular items that we can mark as critical. Now, right here, we're doing this at the site level, so you can leave this to the CRAs to manage, or we can actually do it during development. And we can do it in the back end and force it out to all sites so that you could actually determine what needs to be source verified prior, but we can always go in and adjust it with these settings right here. Now, the great part about Data Viewer in the past, if you've worked with InForm in versions earlier than 5.5, sometimes it could be a little bit of effort to go in and freeze forms and review forms and source verify, or especially if you wanted to lock all the forms at the end of a study. What we have with the Data Viewer is we have the ability to go in and act on multiple forms. So for example, if I wanted to freeze all of these complete forms, I can come in and select the forms that I want to freeze. For example, come into the 2 complete forms on week 8, and you can see right away, once I've selected, I get a few options. And one of them is to freeze. So now I can go ahead and click freeze, and it's going to go ahead and freeze the forms for me. And now both of those forms have been set up into a frozen state. So now I don't even need to know where those forms are. I can know that I just froze them all. Now, obviously, in most cases, I wouldn't want to freeze all forms or lock all forms unless I was doing an interim analysis or locking down my study. But as a CRA, I would often want to lock all the forms for a particular site, and that's where some of our filtering comes into play that we see over here. So I can come in and select a particular site, and when I apply that, it's going to limit my data here to just the site that I've selected. So in this case, I could have frozen all my completed forms prior to going out to my site to do source verification. And instead of having to look through all the forms and see what I'm doing, I'm able to do it right here in a couple of easy clicks. Or in particular, if I was interested in a certain visit, I could have selected that site as well as that particular visit. So now, I'm going to go ahead and show all my data again. And that took away my filter. Now say I wanted to look at the data on my frozen forms on week 8, or actually in this case the unscheduled visit. I can go ahead and select my frozen forms, and then I can click Go to Record Listings. And now you can see that we have a record over here, and we can see that we have 2 forms that have been frozen, indicated by the snowflake, and both of them are adverse events. So these are frozen and ready for me to work on. And it was that easy to get to them just by selecting them and clicking Go to Listings. So now say I wanted to see all the data, and once again I'm looking at all my sites, I can just come down here and click Show All. And this will bring up all of my forms for my whole study. And I can go to any particular form and look at my data that has been entered. So here, I'm going to go ahead and go down to our adverse events. We have a lot of data, a little bit more data entered on the adverse events. And as we look at this listing, we're able to see all of our data that's been entered onto these forms. Once again, not a lot of data entry has been done in this study, but we're able to see the states of the forms. The first 2 are frozen. The second 2 have queries. The next 2 are actually missing data but have no queries. And the final 2, once again, have queries. We can look across our data listings and we see the particular site that they're at, the subject they're on, and the visit, and in this case, the AE number and the sequence of the AE, which is basically, once again, the AE number. Here we see the particular event that was entered, and you'll notice some of these have red dots next to them, and that's because this particular item actually has a query on it. So say we wanted to dig into a query a little bit more. So if we select this item, we're able to come down to the bottom, and we're going to click this little arrow, up arrow, and we're going to expand up the item detail portion. So here you can see, once again, this is in site 1001. The subject is 1004. Our visit, our form, our column, and our particular question, if there's any comments on this item, and when this current value was entered, so the last time any data is changed. And additionally, we see the form state. As we get a little bit further down, we have the full audit history. We can see that this was originally entered on June 12th, and then a query was opened by AutoQuery saying that the stop date can't be prior to the start date. So we have a lot of additional information there to act on that query now and get some information about that particular query. So it's really nice that we can see all of our queries, but what about creating queries? Once again, in InForm, as we all know, if we've used the prior versions, we're always able to go into a form as a CRA or CDM, depending on your rights, and create a new query on a particular item. To do this, we just go to the item we want to put the query on, click the little query button with a plus on it, and type in our query, which is great functionality, and we're able to get it out to sites, and it's certainly much better than working with paper and having to print a discrepancy form and mail it. But sometimes certain things we want to work at a little bit higher level. Here, for example, we're looking at the adverse events, and our event is head pain. So as we look at head pain, maybe as a coder we need a little bit more detail, and we have access to the system. I'm able to come in and do a few different things. For example, here I have 8 AEs, so that's not really a big deal. I can see all of my things that say head pain, but what if I had 1,000 here? I can just select head pain, come over here and select the filter column data, and I have a few options. I have my column, which is event. I can do contains, end with, is exactly, is not, starts with, and I can go ahead and enter, let's just do head to begin with, and click apply. So here you can see we have everything that has head in it, including headache, because we said contains. But say I was really interested in the head pain. Now I can come in and select all of the head pains by holding down my control key and using my mouse. Then come up here and you'll see I have a little button to create a query. I come out, select what I want to do, create my query in my open state, and I type my query in. Once I'm pleased with my query, I just go ahead and click submit. And you can see here that it's going out and creating the queries on all 4 items. So now, instead of having to go each item individually, I'm able to review all of my data in a nice tabular form, and I'm able to act on it all at once. So instead of having to go to each individual item and enter my query, I'm acting on all the data at one time. I know I want to look at all of my head pains. I've filtered down to exactly where I want to look, and I've applied my query to all of my data. So now I'm done. I've put all of them in. I want to get rid of my filter. Once again, I just come down over here and I click Show All. And that's going to bring back all of my data for this study. So sometimes I want to do a little bit more complex actions than just looking at the data on the AE form. Say I wanted to do something like compare this with the ConMed data. I can come up here and select ConMed from my open comparison view. And now we're going to get a split screen containing both the adverse event and the ConMed information. So now I can see all of my adverse events and all of my ConMeds. Now if I select a particular subject, for example, subject 10, my ConMed section is going to automatically filter to show me just the ConMeds for subject 10. So I can review them in their entirety against the applicable adverse event information. So that gives me a really nice way of seeing all of the data together. Now, I'm going to go ahead and close my comparison view. And I'm going to go ahead and tailor my data a little bit more. Say that I was always interested in certain information together. For example, I always wanted to see my, let's say, demographics information. Particularly my gender, date of birth, and screening date. And I wanted to go ahead and compare it to my date of visit information. So now, I'm able to go ahead and create a custom data set. So here we see, sorry, I actually went ahead and canceled that. So I'm going to go ahead and do that again. grab some of my demographics information. And my data visit information. Then click Create. And although this is not the one I just created, this is one I created earlier. For some reason, I'm not seeing the one I just created. But here we're able to see that I have the exact same information I just put together by putting my gender, date of birth, race, and screening date together with my date of visit. So I'm able to go ahead and create some custom sets. And as you can see where I have the demo one there already existing, I'm actually able to go ahead and save those and reuse them. So if there's certain data that I always want to compare together, I can go out and create a whole bunch of custom views that I can then go through and go back and return to at any given point in time. So I'm now going to go ahead and log out of the CRA role, and I'm going to log in as a CDM. And once again, go back to our data viewer. Now here we had mentioned, I had mentioned previously some of the review states. So here we can see we have some data, the data visit. Screen for us. So let me show all of our data. I'm going to go ahead and open up our AE and then open up our ConMed to compare it to. So in this case, I'm able to select a certain subject. Now say I wanted to do some sorting, I'm actually able to click on any of the fields and that will reorder the records based on sorting of those particular fields. So say I wanted to find everything with I wanted to do doses from the lowest to the highest. I can come in and remove the filter on drug and put onto dose unit and go ahead and sort that. I can reverse the order. Additionally, if I was specifically looking for aspirin or acetaminophen, I could actually add a filter there on any column as well. So I could actually apply filters and sorting to both the top and the bottom areas. So I'm not sure particularly how you'd want to sort it, but it is very flexible. I can come in, I can change which particular forms I'm looking at. I can filter the data on any of the variables inside the table, and I can sort on either item on the top or the bottom and filter out data based on either item on any of the items on the top or the bottom.
Thanks, Jeff. If you have any further questions, please, as a follow-up to that, please send that in.
So now we're going to go ahead and I'm going to go to the close the comparison view. And now since I'm on the AE table, I'm going to go ahead and select some data on the AE table. I can go ahead and select, for example, fatigue.
Jeff, we have another question. Is there a possibility to copy the views from other studies?
That's actually a very good question, and I don't know the answer for that off the top of my head. That would be something I would have to investigate and get back to you. So I'm going to ask Tope if she could grab the information of the person who asked that question, and we'll reach out to you, and actually we'll reach out to the whole group and let everyone know.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you. So now that I've selected fatigue, I can come up here to review, and here I can see I have some different review states. I can mark it as needing review, review pending, or reviewed. So I can go ahead and select this record as reviewed, and I can put in a comment. So now I've gone through and I've marked that information as reviewed. So I now have a state where I can come back to our top view, our view visit summary, and I can view anything that's been reviewed, or I can view anything that needs reviewing. So I have a nice way of filtering that. And I'm going to show you a couple other ways to look at the data, but I think we have another question coming in.
Sure. Can you save reports anywhere?
They're actually saved into the system itself. So as a user, you would have access to those reports when you went back in.
So would they be downloadable in any kind of way?
You can actually export any of the views or any of the data out to Excel by using this Excel button up top here. So once you've created your stuff, you have it all there visible. You can export it to Excel, and you can do additional manipulation within Excel, or just provide it as a report, or build graphs, or use any of the Excel functionality. So now we've gone through and we have seen that we can put the data into a reviewed state, and we're now going to be able to see which data is reviewed and needs to be reviewed, but maybe we don't want to have review states there. Something else we can actually do, we can come down and say any data updated since a review. So now if I were to go ahead and select the data review, this is only, and I apply it, it's only going to show me any data that's changed since that review. So if I've reviewed data, all of that's been removed out of here, and we can just focus on the data that hasn't been reviewed. And once again, not everyone's going to want to use the review status. In some cases, that may be a little bit too formal for people. So we have another functionality which I absolutely love, is this updated sense date. So say you've gone in and either as a CRA and a CDM, you've been working, and you know as of the 5th of June, or let's say the 3rd of June, all the data was cleaned and everything has been gone through and everything was great. Or you've done a complete site 1001, for example, on June 3rd. I can come down to my updated sense date, select my calendar control, and select that date, and I apply it. Now the only data that we're going to get is data that's changed since that particular day. So anything that's changed since June 3rd is now reflected in here. So I can go into my record listings, and here you can see on the data visit, all of this information has changed since the 3rd. So not only is it reflecting what has been changed, is it limited to what's been changed, on records that have multiple pieces of information, it's highlighting the exact data that's been changed. So if I come in, show all my records, I'm going to go ahead and limit that one more time. You can see that on the adverse events, with the exception of this one, well, actually all of my adverse events have changed since June 3rd. Now, if I go ahead and adjust that date a little bit, maybe to June 5th, and apply it, you can see less of my data has changed. So here we're highlighting just the particular data that's changed. So this particular start date has changed since then, but this one has stayed stationary even though my event has changed. And in this case, that change for the event is actually the creation of a query. So once again, I'm able to quickly go in and see anything that's changed, and now I can only focus on what I need to do as far as the data review. I don't have to look at things that I've already looked at in the past. I think we have another question.
Jeff, is there a problem with reports, quote unquote, bombing out when trying to run on a very large study?
There's certainly been, and once again, InForm is a software. So in the past, we have certainly seen different bugs that have arisen that it would cause reports to actually, quote unquote, bomb out on a certain study. So with large amounts of data, we have seen some issues. I know we recently ran into something ourselves with one of our data managers that reports kept going down, and we found that our data manager was running a certain custom report at a certain time every week, and we actually didn't know about it. It was a very large report, and it was causing the system to go down. We did find that there was a certain bug related to that. We were able to work with Oracle and get it addressed, and since then we've not had any issues. So once again, there's a few things that can affect that. It's one, software bugs, and sometimes there's also hosting related issues. So, you know, I know we've seen occasionally we see a hosting related issue, and we've hosted with Oracle as well, and we see hosting related issues with them as well. As a hosting provider, we certainly work to address those as quickly as possible. with as much insight to the customer as can be provided. So we'll let you know right away if there's an issue with software, if it's an issue with hosting. If it's an issue with hosting, they usually can be resolved pretty quickly. Sometimes with bugs, it takes a cycle for them to get fixed out, but we may also be able to provide workarounds for preventing that to happen, or go through and analyze the report, see if there's a way we can make it more efficient.
Okay. I think the person who submitted that question had previously been breaking up the reports by site or into multiple reports in order to address that problem.
In some cases, that might be the solution. We may be able to look at certain columns or different things that are causing the problems and maybe find a different way to run it. It would depend whether it was an ad hoc report or a canned report, certainly. But yeah, that would be one way of working around it. But once again, it's certainly if it's a hosting issue, we strive to resolve that as quickly as possible, and bugs can sometimes take a little bit longer. So as we've gone through, that is pretty much the data reviewer. So as we look, once again, the power to go back and kind of summarize everything, as we're using the data reviewer, certainly compared to the InForm functionality in the past, we're now able to exercise power over a larger chunk of data. We're able to go in, act on multiple things. We're not going through clicking on a form-by-form basis anymore. We're able to come through, and actually one thing I did not do is source verify, and I'm going to go quickly do that because I do think that's worth taking a look at. But we're able to do that the same way. Once again, as a user, as a monitor, we're able to go into the site during the day, take a look at all of our data. And sometimes I know the monitors like to print out the data and go in and do it manually, just through the computer time and availability, and go through and do it. So as they come through, they've gone ahead and froze all of their forms. They're able to select all the forms that they froze that day. They've gone through and they reviewed them. We're able to come up here and quickly just come in and mark them as verified. So assuming all of our forms were verified, we're ready to be verified. Now they're all marked as verified. And just as quickly, we're able to come in and unfreeze those forms if we need to. So I did want to do that step because I think source verification can be a sore point in older versions of InForm, and they've gotten a great stride to make it basically a couple of clicks at this point to go in. Of course, once again, you would want to go through and set up all of your filters for your particular sites and your visits. And once again, you're always able to save them and just limit them to things that have been changed since the last time you went in. So when you put all that power together with the ability to save it, you're able to create these nice filters that every time you visit the site with a couple clicks, you're able to freeze all of your forms, go in, do your source verification, click a couple of buttons to mark them all as source verified, unfreeze them, and be on your way.